Welcome to episode 44 of the David Binkowski podcast. Today, we are talking NBA Cup. Specifically, we are talking Pistons v. Bucks on Tuesday, the biggest game of the year so far, about a quarter of the way into the season, but still, for both these teams, it is the biggest game of the year so far because it will determine who wins their group and potentially who makes the wild card. But I'm not here alone. Welcoming to the podcast, you may know him from Twitter. You may know him from BlueSky. We all know him as SnellSZN. Welcome to the podcast, Drake.
Hey, thank you, David. And I think, both of these teams have had, I would say, kind of strange starts to their seasons for different reasons. I think the Pistons have looked pretty good, and the Bucks went on a stretch where they looked really bad. So I'm excited for Tuesday. I think it's going to be quite the game.
It will be for sure, and I'd be remiss if I did not bring up the fact that the Pistons, Tim Hardaway Jr., just last night.
Yep.
And now, again, the Pistons have played the most games in the league. The Pistons played well the other night in Indiana, blew them out, and apparently did not get home until 4 a.m.
That's crazy.
Local time, and then had to play on a back-to-back against a rested Sixers team, and then lost last night. However, all that notwithstanding, Tony Snell had the infamous I think it was quadruple zero or quintuple zero game. Points recorded in 27 minutes. Well, last night, Tim Hardaway Jr., just again, total happenstance that we would ask you to come on to talk Pistons Bucks, and then this happened.
Yeah.
But Tim Hardaway Jr. had the all zeros game in 20 minutes worth of play. So, yeah, for those who don't know, your handle, your background and all those things. How did you pick Tony Snell as your guy, by the way? Just speaking of the zero game and all those things.
Yeah, well, I came on Twitter. I'm going to keep calling it Twitter, I'm not an X guy, but anyways, Twitter, I saw all of these accounts. There was Giannis fan accounts and LeBron fan accounts and KD fan accounts. And I thought, let's shout out the guy that goes under the radar. He just comes in, does his role, doesn't really say anything. Sometimes he's the joke. Let's make an account, one of these Stan accounts for a role player. And it evolved from there. And, one thing led to another. And, 2 years into the account, I'm meeting Tony Snell and his wife before they play a game at their hotel, and the teams there, Atlanta Hawks, are there, and it's just with social media in general, how this can happen is just insane. So very thankful to have the platform that I do, and Tony is wonderful, his wife is wonderful. They've got an awesome family, and I hope he can find his way back into the NBA.
Yeah, a former Piston, by the way, Tony Snell as well. One of my favorite stories about him was just how super low key he was about spending money and always team issues stuff, all that. And that, to me, I'm a very pragmatic person. I don't like the glitz, the glam, the bling, all that stuff. It's just not how I roll. So it's really cool to hear someone that's just you should probably save your money because you never know how long this career is going to last, and why waste it on things that are so superfluous? So it's clothes and jewelry and cars and all that. So I always thought that was a cool story about him, that he was just I'm not wasting my money on any of that because I don't know how long this ride's going to last,
Yeah. He has the same kind of bug as Giannis. Giannis is the same way. There's a story that he came into the practice arena. He was this scrawny kid from Greece, and there's the meme of him loading these water bottles from the training arena into this big garbage bag to bring home because it's free. So he takes that water and he talks about how, the clothes that he wears are from sponsorships. So he gets that stuff so he doesn't go out and buy his own stuff. So, speaking of the Bucks and Tony Snell, that's kind of they've got that same sort of thing going on. But no, that's one of the things that kind of drew me to him is I've always rooted for the underdogs and those role players. And I think he's kind of the model image of all of that.
Yeah, the absolute model of that. So we talked before we started recording, the Bucks started this season not well. And everyone's talking about, even within a few games, should Doc Rivers go, and this team's too old and all these things. And and all of a sudden they're great. And I do have to kind of look back at this. When I look back, at least when I look at the schedule, I obviously watched the game where Ron Holland missed the 2 free throws to send it to overtime, and Giannis goes for 59. And that looked to me like where they finally figured it out. And when I say they, the role players got involved, obviously, and all that. But I really feel like it was Giannis who figured out, like, oh, this is my team. I should not that I have to put up 59 every night. And again, he's doing amazing things since then. But he is the motor that makes the rest of that engine go, or the rest of that car go, whatever you want to say, whatever the saying is. And like, he's just been unbelievable. So can you tell people through, like, what have you seen? Like, what changes have you seen? Because, I'm trying to look at schemes and all those things. And it's like, no, he's just getting into the lane and driving and kicking, and it's like working.
Yeah. No, I think you summed it up pretty well there. I think another thing that's working for him and is attributing to the success is his mid-range is back, especially, with this winning streak they've gone on. He's shooting. I mean, I saw a stat yesterday online. You look at the top mid-range scorers this season, it's like the usual suspects. DeMar is up there. And then I think Giannis was third with the most mid-range makes on, like, not a terrible percentage. I want to say it was like 44% or something. So that's a big part of it. But just like you were hitting on, I think he's realized who he is a little bit. Giannis goes through stretches, just me as an observer and a fan, I think he goes through stretches sometimes where he tries to be guys that he isn't. He'll have stretches where he just jacks up threes because maybe one game he went, 3 for 5 or something. And then the next 2 games, he thinks he's Steph Curry. That's really one of the only things, if anything, that I can, even criticize Giannis on. But no, I think just getting back to the basics, realizing that he's 7 feet with shoes on and one of the fastest players in the league, one of the strongest players in the league. So you can just do basically whatever you want within reason on the basketball court. So he's realized that, Giannis and Dame are meshing better. There's the criticisms of Doc, but I think he's figuring out how to work with this team. He came into an awful situation last year. He had a full off season now. So, the puzzle pieces are coming together slowly but surely. And, a huge part of that is Giannis playing as probably, and obviously I'm biased, the best player in the league. If not one, I think he's undoubtedly 2 behind Jokic. So, he remembered that he's the MVP.
Yeah. It's amazing how, and I saw this last season with this is one of the big transformations with the Pistons that you've seen from year over year. Yes, they have a better veteran roster. We can talk about Malik Beasley as part of that, but they have a better veteran roster for sure, which helps bail them out when they need that bucket, when they need someone to calm things down if they themselves can't do it. However, one of the things that they've done really well this year, and JB Bickerstaff emphasized this in the preseason, is that he said, I don't want guys doing whatever they want all the time. You are good at X, Y, and Z things. Just do those things. You want to work on whatever it is. Do that in the off season. Do that when it doesn't matter. When you do that on the court, and again, Pistons have had a massive issue with turnovers, and they still do this season like they did last year. But last year it was indicative of guys trying to do too much, guys trying to like work on their bag in the middle of a game. It's like, this is not how that's supposed to go. I think Giannis is the same way. When you get back to who you are as a player, what makes you dominant, what makes you an MVP? Oh, that's right. It's me taking over the game, bowling down the lane, and then if guys collapse, kicking it out for 3. Like, that's how that works. Or finish at the rim and get the and 1. The mid-range thing's interesting to me. I've always felt like, they talk about if you're a good free throw shooter, then you're typically a good shooter overall. And I think there's some truth to that for sure, touch and all those things. But to me, the mid-range is really about focus. I think players who shoot a lot of mid-range shots are able to pull up when they pull that shot up, it's about being focused. And you can kind of see it when guys shoot a jumper. If they're like, I can tell, I was a shooting coach and a coach and all those things beyond that with teams, I can tell when a shot's going in as soon as I know it. And even beyond that, when I start to watch their body language, watch their positioning, how they shot it, I can just tell as soon as they let go of it. And it's about confidence, and it's about poise, and it's about focus. And even with my own kids, when I'm like, my youngest son is still playing, and I'm like, stop thinking about it and just shoot. Like, speed up your shot, stop thinking, and just let it go. And next thing you know, he makes 7, 8 in a row. And I'm like, you weren't doing that before. What is it? It's about trusting yourself. It's about staying focused on a catch, and I'm going to shoot, look at the front of the rim, release, all those things. And I feel like that's the same way with mid-range shooters. They have that. I think shooting is 100% focus. I think it's very hard for guys who are like Malik Beasley. He'll sink the three, but like everything that goes into that shot, it's been trained a million times. 10,000 hours, all that stuff. But it's also a focus that they have. And then once they celebrate, whether it's Steph Curry or it's Malik Beasley or whoever, I'm not comparing those players by any stretch, but there's a level of that where it's like, I know I can do that. I can turn that on when I need to. And Giannis is that kind of player. He's super intense. And I feel like when he has that intensity going, when he gets that drive to the lane going, he's focused. And it's a very hard thing. Obviously, you can't stop him. But once you make him, okay, fine, we're going to build a wall, Stan Van Gundy style, and we're going to make him do pull-up jumpers. He's hitting those too now, and that's super dangerous. Again, 59 against Pistons the last time, and we'll see what happens. But I do want to see, looking at this game that's coming up Tuesday. It's in Detroit, so it is a road game, right? So typically the home team and the bench play pretty well at home. The road team's bench typically doesn't play as well. But again, this is also a championship pedigree team. They've been there and done that before. What do you think is going to happen? Where do you see it coming on Tuesday night?
Yeah. Just a quick bounce back. You were talking about Giannis and the shooting and how it's all about, focus, but stop thinking about it and be confident. It's really funny that you mentioned that, because that's exactly what I was going to say about Giannis's shooting is when he's at his worst, and I know he's going to have a bad shooting game, it's when he is just dribbling and he stops and he stands there and he's thinking about the shot, and you can almost guarantee it's not going to go in. When he's the best mid-range shooter or three-point shooter, which by no accounts is he a good three-point shooter, but when he's in these stretches where he makes them and he actually looks decent, he's catching the ball and he's going straight up with it. It's a catch and shoot, or he hits a crossover and then he just pulls up and it's one fluid motion. And that's when I feel confident with his shots. It's when he stops and he thinks about it. I can almost assume it's not going to go in. So I completely agree there. But just now bouncing back to Pistons and Bucks, I think it's going to be a good game. The Pistons, for whatever reason, it's the same thing with the Hornets. Even when you guys were, quote unquote, like really bad, the worst versions of these Pistons teams within the last couple years, I still, for whatever reason, felt like they played the Bucks pretty hard. The Bucks would probably end up winning, which, I think there was a streak where they had won like 10 in a row or something like that. But the Pistons, for whatever reason, play the Bucks hard, and their roster is improved a lot this year. I mean, Cade is Cade. He's solid. Jaden Ivey, by all accounts, it looks like he's kind of breaking out a little bit. And then Malik Beasley, who I'm very familiar with his one season with the Bucks last year. If there's a game where he gets going, he almost feels automatic. So I'm excited I'm excited for the game Tuesday. A lot of the Bucks bench players have really been turning it on recently. My kind of star has been AJ Green, who we in the fan base like to call Dairy Bird. But the joke coming out of, he went undrafted. I think he went to like Northern Iowa or something. But it was like finally the Bucks hit on this white guy that comes into the league. He can shoot and he can actually play, where, the Heat pick up all these undrafted dudes who turn into stars. Finally the Bucks get one of these guys, and not only can he shoot, but he's proven that he can defend as well at an NBA level. So you hit on the point about the benches, and I think the Bucks bench is going to be huge come Tuesday, especially when Giannis and Dame aren't on the court. So what can guys like Bobby, what can guys like AJ, what can they provide when the stars aren't out there?
What have you seen? I know I follow along with the kind of the dialogue around some players, and people were like screaming about Bobby Portis, about basically get him off the floor. He's terrible. All those things. What changed in his game that all of a sudden now I'm not seeing those conversations anymore? So
I think a big part of it is the winning. The winning has changed things. The fan base is very divided, where you have kind of the Bobby loyalists where, they're chanting his name at the games. And even when he's not, hitting his shots, they're still backing him in full force. I'm a little bit more skeptical of Bobby. I kind of fall in the other camp. He has his games where he comes in and he has like a double within like 5 minutes, it feels like, and he's hitting his threes and he gets a huge momentum block or something like that. But then, that's great. These players all have those games, but when the shot's not falling, what is he really providing? And then you have to look at, playmaking, which he's not the greatest at. He's kind of a black hole sometimes on offense. When he gets the ball, you can almost guarantee it's a turnaround jumper or something. And then on defense, he's, 6'10", 6'11", whatever he is. He might get a block or two, but really what else is going on there defensively? And it's not, he's not a great defensive player by any means. So, he goes through these stretches where he's automatic, it feels like, on offense, and that overshadows, the defensive woes a little bit. But, when the team is winning and when the Bucks have won, 8 of the last 9 or whatever it is, you can, push that kind of stuff under the rug a little bit easier. But during that losing stretch and during some of these games, it's been a little bit of a rough watch.
Yeah, he reminds me of like almost like a extraordinarily poor man's Julius Randle, like where it's just that black hole where and I think obviously Randle's way more consistent, made an all-star team, all that stuff. But like, there's a part of me that looks at that game and it's like, man, it's crazy to me. And again, we talked about like Giannis, just do what you do well. That's all you need to do. Just do what you do well. Do nothing more, nothing less. I have noticed, his perimeter defense, for example, not great, all those things. So it's I'm interested to see when the Bucks and the Pistons play, if the Pistons stick with Duren, to guard Lopez to start the game, because he has struggled mightily with with stretch fives. Like he cannot, once you take him away from the rim, I don't know what if it's he's young, first and foremost. I always say that when Pistons, I talked about him last week on the podcast. They're like, should we get rid of Duren? I'm like, he's still on his rookie deal. Like, what are you even talking about? And like, in addition to that, if he's not playing well, do you think that someone's going to come in and to offer him a max contract? Like, what if he's not playing well? It's because he has flaws in his game, and any contract he's going to get is going to reflect those flaws. But beyond that, he really struggles with guarding stretch fives, whereas Isaiah Stewart is someone who's just, his basketball IQ is amazing. If you watch him defensively, he always knows where to be. For an undersized 5, he's getting block after block after block, and it's like just out of the blue because he knows where to be, where the help defense should come from, whereas Duren's still figuring that out. And I know that was one of the things when the last time they played that really stood out was if Brook is hitting threes, then the Pistons have got to make a switch because he cannot guard on the perimeter. And that to me is going to be one of the key things, because if there's a big thing. I talked about this last 2 seasons ago, or it was after the Pistons acquired James Wiseman for Sadiq Bey and all that whole trade with the Warriors. The model was to have 2 bigs That was how, like, look at, it was Giannis even within the Central. It was, you have Giannis and you have Brook. You look at the Cavs. You got Mobley. You have Allen, right? It was always like, we better have two bigs. And the Pistons finally said, you know what? We don't need to do that. And so they finally were playing better by not having two bigs on the floor. However, when Giannis does drive, that's an easy dump off if Brook's right there for a dunk or whatever. So that's my biggest fear is, like, how are we going to guard the interior?
Sure.
Because you've got one player who, if he's taken away from the rim, maybe a Sar Thompson, if he gets the start or slides in, quickly, can help on that stuff with blocking shots and all that. I just, the rim protection, especially with Giannis, is going to be huge. Now, if we can draw some fouls on Giannis, that's a different story. But then does Dame take over? Does it become, that whole thing? So I think it's going to be I think it'll be a close game. I think it's 6 points is what Detroit has to, if Detroit loses by 6 points or less, they make the wild card or something like that.
Sure.
I have a suspicion it's going to end up being a very close game, a tight game. You probably saw this before. Not only do we have a coach who knows how to draw up plays, but the Pistons have a coach who knows when to timeouts appropriately. So it's, last season, and this is like going back to that run of wins that the Bucks have against the Pistons, like last season was just like, we're down by 5, we're down by 10, we're down by 15. It's like, Monty, call a timeout. What are we doing here? Whereas JB is like, oh, we're up by 4 and now it's a tie game, or down by 2. We better take a timeout. He's very much on top of that, where he doesn't let those timeouts go to waste. He challenges he'll challenge a call, which is, we didn't see that last year. So I think just on a competitive level, if Cade's healthy, I think it'll be a close game. Like I said, my hope is that your bench players are terrible on the road.
Right.
But I think it's honestly, the keys to the game to me are really, it's going to be, if Brook Lopez is hitting threes and Duren gets in foul trouble, I have a suspicion you guys are going to pull it out, because we won't have the interior defense. I love Paul Reed, but B-Ball Paul is not a full-time center anymore. And I don't think he can match up with what you guys have.
Yeah, it really does come down to bench players, and I think that's kind of the story for the Bucks. I mean, I think you can say that for most NBA teams, but that Giannis is going to go out and he's going to be Giannis. I mean, he has a couple of games a year where, he just doesn't look like himself, but by all accounts, especially during this stretch that he's going through right now, he looks unbelievable. I mean, Dame is Dame. He has his stinkers, but even when he's not shooting well, he still finds a way. I think during this Bucks win stretch, he has, I want to say, at least like 5 games where he has 10 plus assists. And I think one game he even had like 13, 14 or something. So Dame is going to be Dame. So outside of those two guys, who's it going to be? And if, the Pistons go all out and stopping Giannis, and Dame's having an off shooting night, okay, then who's going to step up? Thankfully, AJ Green has been great. Gary Trent Jr. started the season horrific. I mean, he was shooting like 15% from 3 or something, where he's known as a shooter. But over the past, just during this win streak that I'm going to keep referencing for the Bucks, he's been hitting like 50% of his threes or something like that. Taurean Prince has been really solid. So which one of these guys is it going to be that's going to step up? Because Giannis can do everything that he can, but we've seen Giannis games where he drops 40, where he drops 50, and the Bucks still lose because it was a one-man show, basically. So it's really going to come down to who is going to capitalize on the looks that Giannis and Dame are going to get them, because the open shots are there. Whether the Bucks make them or not, that's a different story.
Yeah. I think the Pistons go pretty much as, obviously if Cade or Ivy struggles, that's a problem. Beasley's been a godsend for Detroit. I hope they re-sign him. I hope they get him to a longer term deal, because he's exactly the kind of player the Pistons have needed for years, which is, number one, someone you have to guard. last year, you would literally see 5 to 10 feet of space with guys helping on drives from Cade or Ivy because they knew they had no shooters on the wings. So Beasley alleviates that problem. I personally would love to see more Fontecchio minutes. Going back to the THJ struggles, ever since he was cussed, he's had one good game, and ever since, outside of that, he's been terrible. He's had 0 for games, not just once, where he's not made a shot. And meanwhile, you have someone like Simone Fontecchio sitting on the bench, getting 17 to 18 minutes, who will go 3 for 5 from 3, and then never see the floor again, in favor of a veteran who's clearly struggling. And I hate to say this about someone. I actually loved when Hardaway played at Michigan. Big fan. Don't hate his game at all. But you have to realize that some nights when you don't have it, like that's one of the reasons why Dallas was like, "Can you get out of here, please? Can we trade you and get you? We'll happily give up on you for someone else who can deliver more consistently." And if that's the case, there's talks about Detroit potentially trading Fontecchio because he's not getting the minutes. I think that would be a mistake. And one of the things that they still like, well, he's struggling. He's struggling because guys aren't leaving him open. Like he's not like when they got him last season, nobody accounted for him. So he was typically getting catch and shoot threes in the corner, wide open. Well, this year they're staying home on him, not letting him have those shots. So if it means that he has to come off something, run actions for him to get open, then please do that, because he to me is a much more valuable player. He's taller, he's bigger, he's taller, he's longer, and he obviously has more of a career ahead of him on a great contract, no less, for Detroit than what THJ brings to the table. But if the veterans aren't playing well for Detroit, we're done. That's just it's simple as that. And we've had very few games, very few Malik Beasley stinkers, if any, this season. He's been fantastic. Hardaway, on the other hand, like I said, I'm hoping Asar Thompson and Fontecchio take all of his minutes, because I would rather, if we're going to have someone go 1 for 6, I'd rather it be Asar Thompson working himself back into shape, who could still play defense and block shots and add more to the other side of the floor, than someone who's just a nothing on offense, where it's like you see the shot go up and you're like, as soon as it goes up, I'm like, back of the rim. And sure enough, back of the rim, and then it's a long rebound, and they're off in transition. Whoever it is we're playing, it doesn't matter. So, like I said, I'm hoping for a close game. I'd love to see a Pistons blowout, but just from a competitive standpoint, I loved, by the way, the Pistons taking it to the Pacers this last weekend.
Yes.
I saw people complaining about it, and I'm like, look, these are the rules. Number one, there's a point differential, so that teams will go all out for 48 minutes. I love that. And I'm old enough to remember when Dan Hawkins took over the Boise State program in football, and he would put up 70 points a game on the regular. And everyone's like, why is he running up the score? And he had that amazing quote about, like, Gandhi never took a knee, Jesus never took a knee, I'm sure as hell not taking a knee, or whatever it was.
Sure.
Yeah. I love that mindset, because look, you only play, like, there is a thing about being a good sport and all those things. And I've been a coach on the losing end and on the other side of that, where you can potentially run up the score. So I get it. But in this format, it's meant for that. And to see guys who are pros, and the knock on NBA is that they're not trying or whatever, to see them trying up until the last second. There was a sequence in the Pacer game where Beasley hit a 3 and then got a steal and then dished it off to Duren for a dunk. So 5 points in the span of like 3 seconds. And it was like, I'm going crazy at home. I loved it. I thought it was great.
Mm-hmm.
People who hate that, I'm like, you must be used to watching, like, these games where it's like, let's be gentlemanly here. It's like, no, run it up, have some fun, especially on the road. I don't know. And I'm a big fan of watching opposing teams, send a crowd home upset. I think it's funny. I think it's just like, it's as a player, I love doing it. As a coach, it's great. And so when you can send the fans home, you get the crying kid from Kentucky from back in the tournament, all those things. Like, you get the amazing memes out of it. Like, it's a fun time. So at any rate, before I let you go, I did want to talk to you about the Bucks' future. And talk about the future, because we kind of have to look at the past to do that. The Bucks have not had a really great draft history, right?
That's for sure.
And they're an older roster. So if for some reason, and this was the conversation of even a few weeks ago, is if this doesn't work out, they don't have the assets, they went all in on Dame.
Right.
So I thought it'd be fun to play a game with you, looking back since Giannis was drafted, at the guys that they drafted, whether they kept the pick or not, and kind of where are they now? Are they even in the league? Are they playing overseas? Are they in the G League? Are they at another team? And you can start to kind of look at patterns, I think, when you do that, especially in a team like Milwaukee that's been successful, where it's like, oh, we had that guy and just let him walk, right? So there's a couple guys, like the first guy I was going to pull up was Lamar Patterson. Now that pick got traded to the Hawks. So like, I hate to say that's really not their pick because they chose him for somebody else essentially.
Yeah.
What I did find interesting, by the way, about him, Lamar Patterson did play in Puerto Rico twice. He played for the He played for the Aguada Santeros and for the Quebradillas Piratas, which, if you watch The Last Dance, was where Phil Jackson coached way back in the day. So that's actually, you know, more recent history than you know, whatever. But another player that came up, Johnny O'Brien III. So picked by the Bucks in 2014, summer league guy. And he scored 12 points on December 26th.
There you go.
2014, he had 12 points in a win over the Hawks, 107-77. So now I have to ask you, where is he now?
I could not even begin to tell you. I truly, I mean, in my head, I'm just going through their draft picks, and there's a couple of guys that stick out, but I'm going to be completely honest with you. I would say since Giannis was drafted in 2013, from that point on, just going in my head thinking about how many of those guys are still in the league, I think we're looking at less than 5, probably maybe 3.
Yeah.
I mean, you have Brogdon that comes to mind. You have Dante that comes to mind. And then that's kind of, I mean, that's kind of it. I mean,
there's another one.
Is there another one?
Played really well this year for a team that, you know, did not re-sign Paul George and said, take the ball and run with it. Norm Powell.
Norm Powell they traded him away, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, Norm Powell is one of those guys. He's one of those guys that's been on my like dream role player wish list for the Bucks for what feels like forever now. So the fact that they were so close yet so far, it's their draft history. I mean, thankfully with where the Bucks are right now, they're in win now mode, and I don't really care about draft picks for the next, 3, 4, 5 years, however long Giannis is playing. But I think the after Giannis years are going to be bleak for a while, and I'm trying not to think of them, but I'm just hoping that the drafting steps up here, because thankfully we hit on Giannis. Who knows what Jabari would have turned into without those injuries, but yeah, it's been bleak.
Yeah, you have it's a litany of guys who bounced over to Europe, bounced over to Asia, or aren't playing at all. It's literally, I mean, Damian Inglis, he is playing in Japan, right? There's a couple guys that were drafted by the Bucks that are playing in Japan. You got a couple guys in Spain. Let's see, there's one, Rashad Vaughn. I don't even remember him. Like, I watched the NBA every night almost. I don't even remember him. He's playing in Greece. It's a little role reversal there with Giannis. But like, they're guys that they just did. They just swing and miss, swing and miss, swing and miss. Even with my Pistons, we may not have kept everybody, but like Middleton was a Piston, right? We got him right. There's guys that we had, Spencer Dinwiddie. Like, there's guys that we brought in. That's like, that guy was a pro. Even if it was just for a few years. And like, I'm looking at this list and I'm like, these guys aren't even, you got Shanghai Sharks.
It's crazy.
Guys playing not even remotely, guys in the G League still. Like, it's just crazy how many of these were absolute misses. Thon Maker, former Piston as well.
They're first round picks too. I mean, it's not like they're all, 30 overall picks or 40 overall picks. It's first round guys. I mean, DJ Wilson, first round guy.
Shanghai Sharks,
first round guy. Rashad Vaughn, first round guy. Marjon Beauchamp, first round guy. RJ Hampton, first round guy. It's like if the Bucks had been dominating for years and years, and they always had like 1 second round pick that was way back there, and none of these guys panned out. It is what it is. You can't bet on second round picks, turning out, especially late second round picks. But to have so many consistent first round picks just be kind of duds. And I mean, even Dante is having a brutal year with the Timberwolves right now, but he was great on the Knicks. He was pretty good on the Warriors, and he played on the Kings. And, he didn't really reach that potential until he left the Bucks. And I think he probably, if he stuck around, he probably was never going to reach that potential, just because they had Giannis and, they weren't really focused on developing these guys. But, yeah, their draft history is not, it's not great.
Yeah, it's going to have to be, the only hope is not hope, because we don't hope this happens. But if Giannis does say, get me out of here, then they can at least replenish with a ton of first round picks.
Sure.
From whoever, if it came down to it, they got to try to replenish some of those picks, because because of the Dame trade, the closet's empty at this point. They've got nothing to even trade for. That was the early season talk, was like, what are they going to do? Like what they can't do anything. They'll be getting guys. They have to bide their time until guys are getting scrap heaped, essentially. Yeah. Are basically salary casualties, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'm looking forward to Tuesday night, and I wish you guys good luck, but not too good of luck. And again, thank you again for joining me, Drake. And again, you can follow Drake on BlueSky. He is SnellSZN .bsky.social. I'm D. Binkowski as well on BlueSky. And I will see you in the next episode. Hey, that was episode 44 of the David Binkowski podcast. Thanks if you made it all the way through. Please make sure you rate, like, and subscribe. Give us a 5-star review, and feel free to share it with a friend. You can also follow me if you want on BlueSky. I'm D. Binkowski on BlueSky. The full handle is at dbinkowski.bsky.social. We'll see you in the next one.